Hi, welcome to a new video on my Raspberry Pi. This time I want to get back to a former experiment of mine which went wrong for a couple of reasons. And in this case I am only using the Raspberry Pi 1, which I have set up with a resistor, a transistor, an LED and a fischertechnik motor. From the Raspberry Pi I have put a jump wire to pin 6, and pin 6 has been connected to the mask line. So the mask line is now really the mask line. Pin 7 is connected to the resistor, but also with this jump wire to the plus line, so this now really is a plus line operating on 3.3 volts. The motor, as you can see, is connected to the transistor, but also to the mask line. So in this setup, provided that the transistor is connected well, it has very short pins, and then the LED and the motor should run. So let's go check the code and see if it indeed runs. With this code in Python, I import the GPIO again. I import time as well. I set the mode to use the GPIO on the board. I set up 7 as GPIO output, and this is okay, but it's from a former project. Then a try catch, or more appropriately mentioned in Python, try except, and with a keyboard interruption the whole GPIO will be cleaned up. Within the try except I have a continuous while. It's always true. Motor will be motor on will be printed, and then the GPIO pin 7 will be made true and kept true for 2 seconds, and then it would be nice if I put here that it became false. And that means that it just stops after 2 seconds. So let me save this as GPIO motor 1.py. Then starting my terminal, and I have to keep in mind to do it with sudo, and then Python. Let's see whatever happens, and I do see that the LED is being turned on, but the motor does nothing. So that is let's do Ctrl C. The keyboard interrupt is not defined. Why is that not defined? That's a good question. Let's find out in the why would it not be defined? Did I put an S here, well it shouldn't. So Ctrl C again, Ctrl S for save. Let's do it again. And this time it is better. LED goes off now. However, the motor is not running, and let me show you on camera. So with the code I will show you what happens. The LED clearly is burning, but the motor doesn't give a sign of life, and that is clearly what should happen. So just maybe the 3.3 volts is not enough, but we'll have to check whatever happens. So to see if this really is the case, I have to measure the voltage. So the same multimeter as I've used in the past. For measuring purposes, I have put an additional wire into the mass, and I clipped the mass probe on it, and now it's time to find out in which way the whole circuit works. So this is nicely showing voltage, then here as well. Now the question is, what voltage does the plus of the motor show? I'll lift it up a little. And that is quite okay. So how much does this show? And I don't. This is on 5, however it is measuring 12 volts in total. But anyway, this should be quite okay to run the motor, I would think. And it is still running, but the motor does nothing. So the question is, why is this? And I expect that I have to turn up the voltage a little bit. So now is to find out how. Some further research led me to the conclusion that I haven't been using the exact right approach, because of course you need a transistor like I have done with my Arduino, but also, and I should have realized that a little bit earlier, pulse width modulation. The motors I'm using are from Fischertechnik, and they use pulse width modulation. So I've been looking for the same thing on Raspberry Pi, which is there, which I didn't know, and the pulse width modulation is on a few pins, only a few. They should be, and that's another thing, they are approachable within C and C++, not from Pi. It can be done from Python, but only with a wrapper around C++. So the Python program I showed earlier is gone. Well, I still have it, but not using it anymore. And I've started a new program in C++, including the wiring Pi header file. Everything else is well, not everything else is the same, because here in a previous experiment I instantiated all ports that I needed, pins that I needed. However, with the PWM, pulse width modulation, things go a little different, and it gets even more different than I am used to, because in Python you use just pin 12. In C++ you have to use the GPIO number, in this case 18, which is the same as this one. And wiring PI uses uses pin number 1, since that is the first pulse width modulation pin. Then, after you set the pin mode number 1 to PWM output, you say PWM write to 1, and in my case I try value 256 out of this whole range. And here I divert from the example, because the example uses delay and I use microsleep, and in both cases this should be 1000. Well, delay uses 1, microsleep uses 1004. And that should be different, because they should be 1 million. As micro is smaller than milli, milli is 1000, so this should be 1000. And this is the Ctrl+C pressed, where I notice I have to, this is interesting, I'm commenting all these lines out because I'm not using them, except for GPIO 18, but I'm not exporting them anyway, so let me just do it like this. And see what happens. That will be a very interesting experiment. And yes, I'm very curious indeed if all of this is going to work. So now I have to compile. and that is going to be interesting because I need a GPIO class CPP. Then I need GPIO GPIO, of course, motor.cpp as an output, GPIO motor. Let's see if that works. Oh, this is an interesting thing. No such file directory. It can't find this. So that is very interesting, because this was the same way as in the example. And I'll have to find out why. So that's what I'm going to do next. So the compilation error about the header file is solved in a way that I didn't expect, because this file was not in the usual user local lib, but in my own home directory in here, where I compiled it. And although I did the build as instructed, it is just here. That is for one thing. Next thing that I did not expect was, I have to go here and let me go up a little bit. As you can see here, it doesn't know wiring pi setup, it doesn't know pin mode, and it doesn't know PWM write. And that is surprising, because that is all supposed to be in here. So why is this the case? I can't tell you yet, but apparently if I look at, and that is a nice thing to do right now, I am now in here, and one directory further, all header files, and I'm looking for the wiring pi.h header. And then, where is pin mode? Here. Clearly present. Then we can also see PM write clearly present. Wiring setup. Wiring PI setup. Clearly present. So this is all in the header file, and despite that it does not go on error now anymore on the header file, it clearly says all fine, but I don't know it. So this is a rather surprise, and I have to study further on this, but this is the correct way to go, because with this I should be able to address and have the motor going. Is the voltage still a cause of concern? I'm not quite sure yet, but so far I will see whenever I get these problems solved. So that is all for the next time. For now, thank you for watching me starting in this new experiment with PWM on the Raspberry Pi 1. See you next time.